Everything comes from nothing. Because I was in my early 20s, I was hospitalised with really severe anxiety. And then that took me on a whole exploration of trying to find what I could do to fix myself. If I had to sort of say in a nutshell what the difference was, I dropped all expectation.
Welcome to today's episode of I'm Fine, but I am joined by the very beautiful Sarie Taylor. Sarie, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. And I'm feeling very beautiful, but thank you anyway.
Oh, you are. We're beautiful everywhere, inside, outside, the whole aura. Now, our paths crossed probably about 8 months ago, maybe, and I instantly fell in love with this lady from first sight, from our first meal out. So, Sarie, please will you tell our listeners what you do and who you serve?
So I am a psychotherapist by trade. I trained as a psychotherapist many, many years ago and did that sort of in the very traditional sense for probably nearly 20 years. And then I've gone more into the coaching field. I've got an online membership. I've got ICF accredited courses. I train other people to be coaches, and predominantly working with people in business or that want to be in business, just help them sort of get out their own way really, and see what it is that's stopping them from getting what they want, and also to be able to do what they're already doing without as much stress, worry, overthinking, all of that stuff that we all get caught up in. So that's really me in a nutshell.
I think that's so important as well as a female business owner to understand your own mind a little bit more. And I think I first got introduced to that maybe about a year ago. And I know when we've spoke as well, sometimes the things that you say do blow my mind. And I think maybe I think about things on a very basic level. And then you delve into things and I'm like, oh, I didn't even think I was thinking about it like that. So you almost open out this way of thinking that doesn't always feel natural, I think, but it gets you to a place where you go, oh, actually, I'm understanding myself a little bit better and why I'm doing the things that I am doing.
Yeah.
So take me back to the start then. So because you've got children, how did your career start? I know you started out as a sort of traditional job.
Yeah, I did it for 20 years. And originally, I went into the field of psychotherapy because I was in my early 20s, I was hospitalized with really severe anxiety. And before that, I'd been to uni, I'd traveled the world, I'd been in jobs, I was in sales jobs, I was living my best life in London, it was all great. And then it seemed to escalate over, well, I look back now, it was building up many, many years. I was always anxious, just didn't realize it or recognize it. But it then sort of came to a head in my early 20s. And that's when I ended up then spending a month in hospital. And as much as that month in hospital, I had a bit of awareness, a bit of, I was very, very heavily medicated. And I just need to say, I'm not against medication at all. I think it can really be helpful in certain situations. But I was so heavily medicated that I just didn't know whether I was coming or going. It was extreme, like full dose of antidepressants, Valium 4 times a day, beta blockers 4 times a day. Like it was a lot. So I was kind of leaving the hospital feeling fairly chilled from being very heavily medicated. I was like, oh, but I was like, what the hell now? Like, what on earth do I do with this? I'd had a bit of therapy, I say loosely the term, in hospital, but it was like, what are your goals? Strive towards something. What do you want to do in the next 5 years? And I'm sat there thinking, you're missing the point. I can't even function this afternoon. I'm not interested in what's happening in 5 years. I'm so overstimulated and hypervigilant to think about my 5-year plan. So that wasn't very useful for me at the time. So when I left, I thought I need to figure this out for myself, really. And then that took me on a whole exploration of trying to find what I could do to fix myself. And I was embarrassed about where I was at. I was still very much like, only getting anxious is only for the weak. I was in that sort of frame of mind. So I realized that to train as a psychotherapist in the UK, you had to also be in personal therapy. So that was my in. I thought, at least I can say I'm training as a therapist, but get some help.
Yeah.
So I did that, and I was in and out of therapy for like 10 plus years. And again, not wasted. There was things about it that were really helpful, really useful, but I was still in a cycle of burning out and anxiety every 18 months or so, to the point where I literally wouldn't want to leave the house. I was having panic attacks every single day, sometimes hourly on the hour. But I managed to get myself off medication because I wanted to have a baby. And then I had my daughter, who is now 18 and is off at uni. But I had really awful, really severe postnatal depression, anxiety then. And I started my own business, honestly, in the truth of it is because I, one, wanted to fix myself, excuse me, so I did psychotherapy. And also, I thought with me being so mentally unstable at the time that nobody would want to employ me, so I'd need to work for myself.
That's so
So I actually
interesting.
went into it because I just didn't think I was that employable.
Yeah. And I always say that all the time. I'm like, I'm totally unemployable if I ever tried to I just want to do things my way. But, for your
Yeah.
reason, you felt like it was more of a personal reason that you wouldn't be employed. And what was the effects of, the job that you were doing? You're obviously listening to other people. And did you find that you were taking on their burdens as well? Or did you have quite, could you differentiate that when you went home? Or was it something that you were carrying with you?
By the time I'd got to having clients, I was in a much, much better place. But I was, like I say, I was still burning out every 18 months or so. And a part of that was because I felt like I was taking on other people's problems or worries, or I might go to bed at night thinking, oh, are they okay? And are they okay? And with the nicest, I don't want to sound like I'm not a compassionate person, because I'm full of compassion, but you won't find me worrying about any clients in bed at night now. Like, it's
Yeah.
just not an option. And it's actually something that we tell ourselves we need to do and worry, but actually it's quite disempowering anyway. It's like, I don't need to worry about anybody else. I can support. So that, yeah. And lots of people in my family and would say to me, oh, I'm not sure it's the right job for you. Maybe this is why you're burning out all the time. But it was nothing to do with the other people, and everything to do with my own internal experience of how I showed up every day and how I viewed the world and how much I worried, and really, in a nutshell, wanted to control everything.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you find that's a gender trait as well for, more women that have that attribute?
I think we're more vocal about it. I think it shows up in a different way to us. But I have worked with a lot of men, and actually they quite often also want to be in control and feel anxious and overwhelmed, but it just shows up in a slightly different way. But I think in terms of, taking on the load of the family. So for example, in me and my husband, from what I know of him, in my head, it's like, I feel like often everything would need to fall on me. Like, if the kids are off school ill, it's assumed I will do it. If
Yeah.
it's, I mean, I'm saying this with a caveat because, as you know, I've just had cancer treatment for the last 18
Yeah.
months. And so the roles have reversed, and he has been predominantly doing all of that stuff now. But traditionally before that, that's the sort of stuff that would fall on me. I'd be thinking about all of that stuff. And sometimes I'd almost be a bit resentful of, like, he's not thinking like this. But
Yeah.
then he was in his own head thinking, well, I need to show up and work really hard at work and get promoted because I'm providing for my family. So
Yeah.
he still has those anxieties and those worries and that potential to overthink things, but just in a slightly different way.
Yeah. We've all got our own almost agenda, really, haven't we? We've all got our own worries. We've all got our ambitions that we're working for. And we've talked a lot as a couple as our children have got older. And I feel like we've evolved as a couple as well, because we've, you look at things, especially when they're little and you've been up all night with them and you're like, but I'm tired. Like, I've got it worse than you. And, you've got to get to this point and go, it's never a competition. Some days you will do more than me. Other days I will do more than you. But how can we show up 100% each to work together?
I think some of it is also dropping that kind of that ego and this idea and expectation of how it should look and what you should be doing. So I've also got a 3-year-old, and my experience with her was very different. I wasn't anxious, I wasn't depressed, I wasn't all of those things, even though research or professionals would say that I was very high risk of experiencing that again. But I knew that that wasn't going to be the same experience for me because of what I now know to be true, that is very, very different to what I knew 18 years ago.
Yeah.
If I had to sort of say in a nutshell what the difference was, I dropped all expectation this time around.
Yeah.
I was like, what will be will be. If I need help, so I'll give you an example, a very specific example of when I had my now 18-year-old, the intrusive thoughts, our world shrinks when we've had a baby. We are in this bubble, which can be a lovely bubble, but can also be a very isolating, tiring, exhausting bubble. And when you're in a bubble like that and you're in a lower state of mind, which is natural, you have much more insecure thinking, you're more likely to have intrusive thoughts. Now, at the time when I had my 18-year-old, I didn't understand that. So for me, I thought, well, I'm having these thoughts. I remember she was probably about 6 weeks. I was absolutely at the peak of exhaustion, and I was laying in bed and I had this thought pop in. What if you sleepwalk and you go downstairs and you get a knife and you kill your baby and your husband?
Do you know what, Sarie? This is so weird because I remember with my first, she was in a bouncer on the floor and I was cutting potatoes. And I remember in my head thinking, imagine if I just drop the knife. Like, obviously I'd have to drop it with a lot of force and it kills her.
Yeah.
And I was like, what a weird thing. And I said to my husband, I'm like, am I going mad? Like, what a weird thought to have.
No, it's not. It's survival. It's your brain's way of going, this thing is so precious to me that I have to be so on alert. And when we go on alert and we're hyper vigilant, the brain will just throw out all sorts of creative, illusionary examples, and it's normal. And so, in that, but at the time when I didn't understand that, I forced myself to stay awake because I was scared to fall asleep.
Wow.
So I've stayed awake for about probably two to 3 nights. Well, I say stayed awake, I will have dozed, but I was so aware that I didn't want to go to sleep. And the irony was I've never slept walked in my whole entire life. And so, I just had this thought that, oh, maybe that would happen.
Yeah.
And then that very quickly escalated to me feeling unsafe, not wanting to be on my own in the room. And at the time, my dad was diagnosed with cancer when I was pregnant, and he was still alive, but he was very much on his way out. He died when she was 9 months. And so I was on edge, so hyper vigilant anyway, because of everything that was going on. So I know that the levels of stress were really quite high. But again, I didn't understand that at the time. And because I'd had anxiety before and I'd been diagnosed with all sorts of stuff, which I don't have anymore, but generalized anxiety disorder, acute panic disorder, because I'd had them, I just assumed that this was just the broken part of me rearing itself again. This was always going to happen. And that's what professionals will say. You just need to learn to manage it. You'll always have anxiety. So I was very much bought into all of that. And that then escalated very quickly to me going back to the doctors, getting medication. And actually my mum took my daughter for a bit. And I would go every day and I'd be there and I'd be with her, but then I'd have to I couldn't, I was so overwhelmed, I had to come out. She'd come and sit and read a book with me and I'd be literally dying inside the whole time until she'd gone. But it was awful, awful time. Now, fast forward to having Aria, who is now 3. Now, bearing in mind, I got cancer when she was 18 months. It's not been easy, but it's not been fueled with anxiety and panic and stress because I understand how human nature works. And so I can remember we've got a chapel, and it's like, this sounds so, I feel sometimes when I say that, I'm like, oh my God, what do I sound like? We've got this chapel in Wales, and there's like a mezzanine, a glass mezzanine. And I remember when she was probably, again, about 6 weeks, and we were there, and I had this thought going, oh my God, imagine if you just dropped her over the mezzanine or just threw her over the mezzanine. I had this such vivid image of like splat on the floor. It was awful. But I was instantly like, oh, wow, I'm tired.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I know that happens when you're tired.
Yeah.
And then my reaction was to say to my husband, I remember it so clearly, he'd had her the night before. And I remember saying, I know you had her last night, but could you have her again tonight? Because I'm absolutely exhausted. I just feel like I need another night. And he's like, of course you can.
Yeah.
And that was it. That was the only intrusive, scary part of that whole experience. And the reason it didn't escalate and build is because I saw it for what it was. It was a love letter from my body going, you're really tired.
Yeah. Reframing it completely from being like,
it's
oh my God, I'm crazy.
You're crazy. You want to harm your child. You're tired. That's it.
Okay.
And allow yourself to ask, because, and again, when I was, so anxious the first time around, I was almost trying to prove myself constantly that I probably wouldn't have asked my husband to do an extra night. It's like, well, it's my turn and I should be able to do it.
Yeah.
And it's like, where on earth do we get that from? Like, we're exhausted. we've carried a child, we've delivered the child, we've gone through all of this. Like, we're not expected to just to bounce back and be entirely back to how we were for a very, very long time after. And so the main difference was dropping all of that expectation and also understanding that a thought is a thought. It is not a reality. Does not define me. It's not a thought that I want to have because I'm a certain type of person. It's just a thought that comes into my awareness that I can do what I want with.
Which is such a simple theory, isn't it? That we overthink so much, and we go, actually, it's just a thought that I can just get rid of now. It doesn't need to have any place in my world. So you were working, you've had your daughter. What was the sort of aha moment when you went, I need to do this, and this is what I'm going to do?
So I'd already done, as I say, my psychotherapy training because of how I'd been in myself. So the driver was fixing myself. But then when I started to understand this stuff, I actually remember being in the hospital and going to bed at night and feeling so lost, thinking, and I remember having a moment where I was like, if I find the answer to this, I'm going to have to spend my life sharing it with people because this is horrific. You know, I can honestly say that even as hard as going through cancer treatment as being in chemo is brutal and it's awful, I'm still quite adamant that being hospitalized with anxiety was worse.
Really?
Yeah. Because I think, again, knowing what I know now, I've been able to go through the cancer treatment, being kind to myself, being gentle with myself, being proud of what my body's doing rather than scared of it. You know, all of that, it's a different way of experiencing it. And so when I started to come across what I teach now, which was about 11 years ago, it was just, I just couldn't continue working in the way I was working. I couldn't continue to overcomplicate it. I couldn't continue to tell people they had to do a certain type of therapy or had to, you know, do years of talking about it to feel different, because I knew now that that wasn't the case.
And what was it that you came across that you went, this is what I want to teach. This aligns with me, and this has opened my mind to this new way?
Yeah. It was actually, I came across originally the 3 Principles by Sydney Banks, who is a Scottish welder. He's not here anymore. And he just sort of had this enlightenment epiphany moment in his life. But I originally heard it from one of my wonderful mentors, is Dr. Bill Pettit. He's in the US. He's coming over to the UK actually this year.
You're going to girl fan him?
Listen, he's coming for 2 days to my chapel, my love. I'm going to girl fan him. I'm going to
private girl fanning.
No, we're going to do a little retreat. But yeah, he's I've met him before. He's a wonderful man, and the reason I paid attention when he spoke, which again just sort of shows how I think culturally how we work, particularly in the UK, is he is a trained psychiatrist. He's also trained in general medicine, so he's done, you know, been a, I think, GP or a surgeon or something. So he's a clever man. He's earned his stripes. He's done his profession, and he came across these principles, and they transformed his entire life and the way that he works. So he got my attention because he was kind of in the field that I'd worked so hard at being in and done all the qualifications and all of the stuff that was required of me.
Yeah.
But yet he was telling me there's a simpler way. And I was like, well, I'm going to pay attention because you've gone through all of your qualifications. You've got a very, very high profile job where you're looking after, you know, mental institutes with hundreds of patients he was overseeing. And so it pricked my ears up. And I knew in that moment, you laugh at me now, I was on an exercise bike, eating an apple, listening to this podcast, because that's what I was doing. Like, you need to get fit, you need to eat better, and you need to learn.
So an apple of all things.
So I'm like on the bike with an apple doing, because again, when I'd get anxious, you know, people would be like, you need to exercise, you need to do, and all of that is true. Like, we know that we need to eat better. We know that movement helps, but you can't out eat or train a stressed mind.
Yeah.
So, and I remember listening to this podcast of his, and I can't even remember the word that he said, but I just started crying. I was like, oh my God, I have I'm doing this to myself. So unnecessarily doing this to myself, but not in a, God, I've got to stop doing this way, judgmental. It was like I suddenly felt this compassion for myself. I was like, God, no wonder you feel the way you feel.
Yeah.
And it was from that moment I was just hooked. And from there, I just continued and continued to explore. And then it's developed over time. And, and now I teach people. I teach people the unrestricted model is what I've created, but it's a framework where I am constantly pointing to, this is how human nature works. Let's go back to the simplicity. Let's go back to the basics of how we feel, what we actually want, rather than being in our head and just jumping too far ahead all the time. One of the things I talk about a lot in all the stuff I do is this idea of pressing play on life. We can be constantly looking at what we should have done and how time goes fast and we've wasted this time and all of that stuff and should I have done this different. And then we spend so much of our time going, well, I'm going to do this because in 5 years I'm going to relax, or I'm going to do it when the kids grow up, or all of this stuff that we're telling ourselves. And yet we can just press play right now.
Mm-hmm. If you look at animals, and animals are like, I am hungry, so I'm going to eat. I am tired, so I'm going to sleep. Whereas we are constantly planning, aren't we?
But we are made in that same way as animals. We're made from the same universal intelligence behind life as those animals, and you can see it in babies. Babies are the same. Children are the same. I can see, interestingly, now my 3-year-old is starting to get more in her head because she's learning to get in her head. But we are born being present by default. Like, that's what we're also really good at. But we just also have the gift of thought and that intellect, which can be a gift, but it also can really get us caught up in thinking our way through everything. And you can't think your way to well-being. Well-being is, we feel that when we're just, the thinking falls away and we are just in that moment, as I say, just pressing play. Like, people will say like, oh, how do I need to get more present, like as if it's a thing that we need to get better at or learn to do. It's not. It's our default. We just need to press play and go, right, I'm in it now. I'm in, like, yeah. I'm here. What, experiencing it in this moment.
And sometimes we just need to be told that, don't we?
Yeah, reminded of it, because we do know it.
Yeah,
in here we do know it, but it's being reminded. And that's why I love the term press play, because sometimes when I'm in my head, or I'm kind of jumping too far ahead, and I know that I'm in my head and jumping too far ahead because I don't feel good. So your feelings are a really good barometer of where your thinking's at. And so when I know I don't feel good, that's when I find that really useful to just go, press play.
And how have you found delivering this, this program that you've created? How have you found delivering that to business owners? Is it something that sort of naturally evolved?
I think it's like most of us, you start off doing something, but then we always end up working with people like ourselves. Yeah. And I never set out to work with people in business, but I've ran a business now for 20 years. And, it's a successful business. It's grown over the years, and it's given me things in life and flexibility and freedom and stuff that, I'm really grateful for. And I think it just sort of felt like that natural progression of like, well, I understand these people because I am one.
Yeah.
And I know that when we overthink or we get stressed, like, one really good way of not pressing play is to run a business. It's so easy to thinking ahead, strategically planning, all of that stuff that again, nothing wrong with it. Planning is great. We have to plan. Otherwise we don't know at all what we're doing. But there's this misunderstanding that people believe that in order to plan and be strategic, that you have to be kind of in your head with that. You can still plan, but press play now. And one of the things, again, I say with that is like an 80-20 rule that I have. Like, if I am not at least spending 80% of my time pressing play right now, then that needs an adjustment. I can spend 20% in the future if I really want to, but I'm 80% of the time I am pressing play right now. And sometimes the way I do that is like, if I was told I wasn't going to be here in a month, would I still be doing what I'm doing now? And if not, I'm going to really question why not.
That's a very interesting way to think of everything, isn't it? To go, if I wasn't here, would I carry on? Or would you just, again, press play? Would you just do the things that you want to do?
would I be wanting to do this? And I understand and appreciate why people want to plan for the future. We all want to plan for this idea of when we can slow down or when we can. But I tell you the thing, having cancer that has taught me as well, that's not guaranteed to anybody.
Yeah.
And that's why I much more now like to consider. So to give you a daft example, so I did this at a talk of Lisa Johnson's, and it just came to me in the moment where, and it's a really stupid example, but I had a planner. And I'm one of those people that buys a really nice planner every year because I like the idea of being that person that's got that planner. And when you go to write in it and you want to make it all neat and
Yeah.
nice, and, it's not.
I am
So
that person too, sorry.
I have this planner every year and I enjoy the process of getting it and opening it and like that newness. And then I get past, do maybe the first week and then it never sees the light of day.
Okay.
And I don't really enjoy filling it in.
Mm-hmm.
And yet I try and do it because that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to be organized in a plan. You're a business owner. You're supposed to do it like this. You're supposed to do it like that. And I took this planner that I'd written one page in and ripped out and said, someone can have this in this room. You can take it. It's yours. But please just question whether you really need it. And what I said was, if I was told in a month's time, I'm not going to be here, do I want to still be filling in this planner? No. But someone else might go, yeah, because I really enjoy the experience of it. So I will continue to write in my plan until the day that I die. And that's great. But it's about checking what's right for you. And we do this so often. I'm like, I want to be that person, but I'm not that person.
Yeah.
So why am I forcing myself to write in a pretty planner when I don't enjoy it?
Yeah. I'm the person that gets the pretty planner, starts off very neat, and then by page 3, there's just scribbles that I can't even read when I try and look back on it. And I'm like, this is not a good person. I'm spending 20 minutes trying to learn what I actually wrote yesterday to make sense of it for today. I've got a meeting, but I don't know who it's for. The amount of WhatsApps my sister and my mum get going, can anybody read my writing? Who have I got a meeting with?
Yeah, but we tell ourselves what we think we should be doing in order to fit. And this is what, again, it's so noisy online, isn't it? And I get caught up sometimes as well. And I'm like, oh, this is what everyone's doing. And then as soon as, again, that barometer is like, I'm starting to feel the urgency, I'm like, no.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit, because we were discussing before we came on about how as a business owner, you can feel like you are so stressed, you're so busy, you've got to do all these things, you've got to make your business successful, and how much pressure we put on ourselves to make that happen. Yeah. How can you combine your ethos of just pressing play with also the, the responsibility of going, well, for me, I've got to pay the mortgage. So how how do you work with businesses to balance that out?
It's funny because we have responsibilities and we do have to pay bills and we do have to pay mortgages and it gets done, but it's almost like we get into this habit or this cycle of that we get that done by hustling, being busy, working really hard and worrying. And actually, I am busier in my work life now than I've ever been, but I'm also less stressed than I've ever been in business. People think that busyness equals stress and vice versa. Oh, I'll do less work and I'll feel less stressed. That's not how it works. You can feel completely stressed sat on your sofa doing nothing, or you can be busy and also feel fine. It's not about how much we actively do. It's about the dialogue that goes along with it in your head. So it's like you can plan, but the minute you start emotionally planning, then you might feel stressed. So, for example, I can think, okay, what I'd like to achieve in the next 6 months and have a plan or a strategy. This is it. If I'm then like, I've got to make it work, what if it doesn't? What if it fails? What is that person doing? Why are they doing it quicker than me? Why all that emotional attachment to it is what causes the stress, and that's not necessary.
Yeah.
It's entirely possible to be busy and not stressed.
And do you think a lot of that comes back to experiences when we were younger as well? Because I know I've done a lot of work on money mindset and the phrases that are used as a child around money. So things like, and not purposely, but things like, money doesn't grow on trees, and, you've got to work really hard to, to acquire this money. And it almost comes with a correlation of sometimes, you might get offered a contract and you're like, I'm, really good amount of money for this contract. And you are justifiably okay to be paid that. But for some reason, you feel like that's not a it's not justified that you should be getting paid for that because you believe you've got to work really hard and really stressed and be full on all the time to achieve this level of revenue.
Yeah, and that's why understanding the true nature of thought is so helpful, because that is just a thought.
Yeah.
It's not a truth, it's not a reality, it is just a thought. And, it's funny because my upbringing, my dad was wealthy, he ran his own business, which, he was also a very high functioning alcoholic. So he was never working at his full capacity, but did unbelievably well financially. And his ethos was you only get what you pay for. And for me, it was much like you don't work hard, you just get smart,
Okay,
which is
interesting.
a different way of looking at it. But guilt is a big thing, particularly with parents, because again, the minute we've got that responsibility, it's like I have to work hard. My sole purpose is to prioritize and protect these children, and then we lose ourselves in that.
Mm-hmm.
Guilt is like any other feeling. Your feelings only ever come from your thinking. And people think that the feeling of guilt is an indicator telling you do better, be a better parent, be a better business owner. That is not how it works. The feeling of guilt comes from the thoughts you're having and the expectations you're having on yourself. So
Yeah,
for me, it was God, a number of years ago now, I was like, if I feel guilt, that is now my indicator to drop my expectations,
that's such an
to lower
interesting
them.
way to think about it because we talk about guilt so much, especially mum guilt. And I know when my children were little, before I started the business, I had huge guilt on not financially being able to put anything into the household. And then you start working and you build a business and then you feel guilty for then working. And I'm like, guilt will just pop up wherever it is. But you are completely right. It's that expectation that we put on ourselves that we should be
Yeah.
able to do everything.
Yeah, which is not possible, and it's just a feeling like any other. It's coming from it's coming from the thoughts you're paying attention on. So you might have a thought pop in, "Oh, I've got a really busy day today," and then you have a thought pop in, "Oh, I'm not going to be spending much time with the kids." Oh, that means, oh, that's not good. Oh, what am I doing? Should I be doing this? Should I be doing? And it's just that you're giving it energy, like figuring it out, analyzing it. Oh, so how do I make it work? Well, maybe I need to overcompensate and do this for the kids instead, rather than, if I have a thought of like, oh, I'm working and I won't see my daughters because then it's bedtime and her dad's putting her to bed. If I then start to feel that, for me, again, that's a barometer. A love letter is like, you've gone in your head, putting too much pressure on yourself. You don't need to do it.
Yeah. Checking in.
Just having the awareness of that, understanding, again, that your feelings are a barometer only ever of your thinking.
And that's quite powerful once you get your head around that.
It is, I cannot express how life changing it is. Honestly, life changing. And people get it intellectually. There's probably not one person that will listen to this that doesn't kind of agree that your thoughts create your feelings. But understanding it intellectually and really understanding it on a deeper level are two very different things. And when you understand it on a deeper level, just by exploring it and not just working with someone like me, but anybody that shares this kind of stuff, you start to see, oh yeah, it really is that simple. Like it really is that simple.
Yeah. And sometimes the best things they're just they're right in front of your face, aren't they? And you just can't see them sometimes. And you do need someone externally to just go, let's just talk about this and dissect it and then break
Yeah.
it down for you so you can see it. So if we've got anybody that's listening that is either started a business or is thinking of starting a business, can you give them one bit of advice that you think would be just a golden nugget for them to take away from this conversation?
One of the biggest things that I try and instill in anybody starting out a business is everything comes from nothing. There was a stage where we didn't have electricity, and somebody would have been starting to talk about electricity and people would have thought they were mad and above their stations. Just because everybody is doing things out there that might even be similar to what you're thinking of doing or whatever it is, do it your own way, because your everything is going to start from your nothing. And the more you can stay in I know people use that phrase, stay in your own lane, but it is so true, because all you're doing when you're going out there and comparing with other people and looking at other people, it's just noise. It's noise, noise, noise. And it's taking away from your wisdom, which is all you need to do it in your own way.
Yeah.
And that everything comes from nothing. We all start from nothing. That is the beauty of creativity and human nature.
Yeah. And it is a busy world out there, isn't it? You can get consumed by the busyness of it, and the
Yeah.
things should be
I
this
find
way.
it myself, even with everything I know, and I'll scroll on social media. I'm like, oh, this, or I'll have an opinion on that and I'll have an opinion on that. But again, because I know what I know, I'm like, oh, this starts to not feel good.
Yeah.
Come away.
Yeah. So you've got a program starting next week. So if you are listening to this on the day of release, it is Friday, the 20th of March. You might not be. And this is, I think we had a conversation that this is sort of an evergreen that can be dipped in and out of, but you do have a program starting next week. So if you are listening to it on the day of release and you think, actually, I'm interested in this type of work, this type of
Mm.
thought process, tell me a little bit about what you're planning to do.
So this kind of free series is for people to get a taster of what I'm talking about, why it's important, if it's for them. That then goes on to I then open up my 6-month program, which is going through the unrestricted model in a lot of detail and a lot of depth to, like I say, go from that intellectual understanding to really, really understanding it. And so I always do this. I do this free thing before, partly because I have a certain style that I work, and I would much rather people know my style and be on board with who I am before they dive in and work with me for 6 months. But also, not everybody's in a position or ready to do that, and so I like to just say that if you're going to come along for the 3 days, and then there's an hour session as well, like a masterclass. If you're going to come along to that, you will learn stuff. Like you're going to take some value away from it. And yeah, it's really just to open people's eyes to the stuff that they have inside of them that they just don't realize because they're spending so much time in their heads. And ultimately, in a nutshell, that's what it is. And it's so simple. And yet, again, I know it sounds really cheesy, but it is just unbelievably life changing. If I'd have got diagnosed with cancer 15 years ago, I don't know how I would have coped. I don't know how I would have got through or managed. My anxiety would have been through the roof. And yet, because of this understanding, I can honestly say, yes, it has been brutal. It has been tough. There's a bit of PTSD there. When I go in a hospital and I smell, my body remembers chemo and I have to settle myself. I'm not saying it's been easy because it hasn't, but I've also been able to press play in my life in between. I've had great moments. I've enjoyed my experience with family, with friends. So it's learning. That's what it's all about.
Yeah. And it is a skill set to learn, isn't it? It's something that we need to sort of switch on in our brains and just check in every now and again. And who is this 3 days for? Is it for anybody or is it just for business owners?
Well, it's aimed at business owners because, again, that's sort of my area. So a lot of the examples that we'll use will be about running a business or running your life, but actually anybody can benefit. When you're marketing something, you have to be specific
Yeah.
but if you're someone out there and you don't run a business, but you'd like to learn this stuff, you can still learn from it. It's not anybody that wants to show up can show up. Business is just sort of the angle of examples that we'll use. But really what I'm teaching you is about human nature, which is for business and personal.
Yeah, because so much of business life correlates with everyday life, employment life.
Yeah, you can't separate the two. Like it's part of your experience of life, whichever way you look at it. So it's, yeah.
And if they can't make it live next week, can they catch up?
Of course they can, yeah. It'll all be recorded. They can catch up. There's lots of other ways as well. There's that if someone's listening to this much further down the line and that's past, there's always stuff on my website for free that you can go and have a look at, which is just on unrestrictedbusiness.co.uk.
Fab. And if people want to find you online on social, Sarie, what are your handles?
Sarie Taylor coaching on everything.
Oh, that's easy. That's such an easy one to remember.
It's quite good having an unusual name because if you put my name into Google, it's like I'm all over it.
Perfect.
Because there's only really me.
So I will put all the links that Sarie has said in the show notes. If you do want to find her, I obviously think you're amazing. You open my eyes to some of the stuff that you say. And I know you say it's really simple, but sometimes you do say things and I'm like, that's so simple, but yet so effective. So I would recommend going and checking Sarie out, everything that you are doing. I know you talk at lots of events as well. So go find where she is, go be a little fangirl and come find her online. Sarie, thank you so much for speaking to me today.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me. One of the biggest things that I try and instill in anybody starting out a business is everything comes from nothing. One of the biggest things that I try and instill in anybody starting out a business is everything comes from nothing. It is, I cannot express how life-changing it is. Honestly, life-changing. It is, I cannot express how life-changing it is. Honestly, life-changing.
You've just listened to I'm Fine But. If you're unsure about business or what really matters to you right now, why not take our free Core Values course? It's linked in the show notes and it's a brilliant place to begin. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode, and you can follow us online at all your favourite social media platforms at Baby Beats UK. Until next time, I'm Rose and I'm fine. But honestly, we're all just figuring it out.